All right, what's up, everybody? All right, tonight's topic is going to be legal research. I was talking to myself waiting on the bus stop about how to tell somebody how to do legal research. And these are the things that I came up with. And I'm not saying anything brand new. This is the stuff that I do every single day that I have free time. So this is what I do. This is how I live when I am not actually working. So the first thing that we need to learn and comprehend is that you need to be organized and you need to be prepared. Preparedness is the number one thing. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Because people come on any one of these platforms that I may be on, and they always want to make their emergency your problem. And I'm like, nope. Or I tell them to do something and they're not in a position or prepared to do it. And they're not ready to do it. Oh, that's another thing. I'll deal with that later. All right. So preparedness is very important. How do you get prepared? What does preparedness look like? First of all, because you may be interested in legal topics, you should always be in a position to learn something that you never have before. It's our responsibility to know and learn the law. It's our responsibility. We don't have a choice. Now, other people choose not to do it. Well, everybody chooses not to do it, but we really don't have a choice. We never want to be in a position like we are today in society where we think the only people who can know the law are bar members. And that's the society they want. They want total and complete ignorance so that the only thing you do is rely on them, and then they railroad you, they backdoor you, they take away your rights, they ignore the things that are important in favor over what makes them more lucrative. Because to them, it's not, they don't care about people, they care about making money. Because if they care, then they would be the ones teaching this, and I shouldn't have to be the guy teaching this. I say this all the time. Like, if you have to learn the common law of England from me, we're all in trouble. If you have to learn the United States Constitution from me, we're in trouble. If you have to learn what law is from me, a guy on TikTok and YouTube or wherever, then we're in serious trouble. Because it was not my responsibility to teach the law or know the law. I mean, well, it's always been my responsibility to know the law. But to share it, no. First of all, never mind. So it's our responsibility, right? And so when there is less ignorance, then we are less susceptible to being fooled, to being disregarded, to being ignored. And we learn to raise the right issues because we are prepared, right? So how are we prepared? The first thing, as far as learning the law, I don't want to call this legal research. There's no such thing as legal research. There is knowing the law and learning the law, and then there is ignorance. That's it. Because legal doesn't equate to law. So, as the most important thing is in a information age, in a world where everything is streaming or everything is I don't know how to say the word, but today or this morning or last night sometime, I seen a dude get on the internet and say, I used to work at this company. I don't know if it was a record label or like a blog or something. And he got let go or he quit or whatever. And then a couple years later, this was recently that the company that he worked for erased all of the work that he did from the website. So he said, it's very important that you learn to archive the things that you do. He was speaking from a creator standpoint, but even more so, as we learn these things, we have to be able to prove these things. And so it's very important that we learn to save, store, archive, whatever that looks like. And so the first thing you need to have are flash drives. Flash drives. I have mine in my backpack. I should have got it. But there's also a thing called a solid state drive. A solid state drive is like a big. It's not that much bigger, but it's a big flash drive essentially. And so I keep everything on. It is a type of external hard drive. An external hard drive would be what they call a HDD. A SSD is it's more solid, so you could drop it. You can, I'm not. You shouldn't drop it, but you could drop it, and it's got a little more impact protection, and it's not based on a disk. An external hard drive has an actual disk on the inside of it. It looks like a block, but it's an actual disk. A solid state drive is just two little sticks that store all the. Just think of it like a SD card versus an actual disk. So a flash drive or a solid state drive would be very important for storing things offline. Yes, 1 terabyte should be plenty. I have a 2 terabyte one because I got it on sale one time. So the more the merrier. But as I'm getting ready to go over, as it relates to documents don't take up a lot of space. We're going to go into dictionaries here in a few minutes, and the biggest dictionary that I think I have may be 2,000 pages, and it doesn't take up that much space. So documents and audio doesn't take up as much space as you think. And so you could have, I got an insane amount of documents, and they don't take up nothing. So documents are so 1 terabyte would be plenty. If you could find a 1 terabyte flash drive, that would be cool. But a 1 terabyte solid state drive, I have one from Samsung. I think Samsung has like one that I wish I should have got it, but it's got like a little rubber protection around it. So if you drop it, it's not gonna crack as easily. And so that's where I should back them up more often, but I back up at least once every 2 or 3 months. So I have my computer, and it's got, because I download stuff on there every day, but then I back up every couple months, everything that I got onto the solid state drive or the SSD. So a flash drive or a solid state drive. That's preparedness. Also, notepads. I got legal pads stacked up. I got little legal pads. I have big legal pads because as you learn stuff, you need to learn how to take notes. Taking notes is crazy. It's the greatest thing ever. Is taking notes. Stuff online is not going to work. I tell y'all this all the time. They're going to figure this stuff out. None of this stuff's going to be on the internet. None of it. They gonna figure it out. They working on it. They getting this AI stuff going, and then one day with a click of a button, everything can be erased. They probably can do that already. But there was a dude, I talked about this one time. There was a dude, I think he's in England. He makes notebooks in England or something like that. And I think it was last year or a couple years ago, the airline's computer systems went down. And the airline computer systems went down, and nobody could leave. Nobody could fly. Nobody could do anything. He said like a couple days before, like maybe the last week, he tried to use cash in England, and they said, no, we don't do cash, yada, yada, yada. And then Microsoft had a big outage, blackout somewhere, like across the planet, I think, half the planet. And nobody could fly. Nobody could fly anywhere in America or anywhere else because the blackout had happened or whatever. And then literally during the couple days of the blackout, they were begging for his cash the next day. He's like, oh, I thought y'all didn't want my cash. He's like, no, we make an exception. Yeah, because that's what they want, that cash. When convenience and all this stuff don't work, you're gonna need some pieces of paper, right? And so this dude made notepads, and he said it's very important that you learn to take notes. He said taking notes is so an odd thing now that in England he was sitting in a park taking notes, and the cops came up to him and was wondering what he was doing, because if you're not on your phone all day and you're not, being hypnotized by all of the deception, then some dude who may be trying to remember something, or just just understand something, making a list, checking it twice. Okay, well, now that's a crazy thing now. So taking notes, having notepads, especially after you read and verify stuff, just summarizing what you've learned. It's that simple. Summarizing what you've learned. Okay, what does that word mean? Okay, bet. It means this, 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 this. That's what I learned. You may never look at it again, but writing it, saying it, seeing it, all of those helps memory. Helps memory. So that when you're in front of people, you don't have to constantly, oh, where did I put that? Oh, I know I got it. I know I got it. Because if you do end up in court, they don't want to hear none of that. Oh, I got it right over here. You're going to have to know it. You're going to have to cite it. You're going to have to prove it. They want you to be prepared to defend yourself, right? Or, to, make your complaints or whatever. So, notepads, flash drives. Also, I would get in the habit of, I tell people this who join the Patreon, you need to open a Google document, learn Google Docs, and learn to compile information. Like, for instance, on the Patreon, I have 1,000,000 cases on there. Okay, well, if those cases are relating to you or to your state, then you need to learn to copy and paste and compile that information. Have a Google Doc called Colorado, and every case that I find or that you find, okay, we'll add that to the Colorado thing. And you can take that thing to Kinko's or FedEx or whatever, and they'll create a little booklet for you based on that. And that can be, once you learn to be organized, okay, well, somebody says something stupid in court. Nope, I got that right here. Yeah, you're not allowed to do that, right? Because the Supreme Court of Colorado said, right? So all of this is in the vein of preparedness. You understand? This is preparedness. This is organization. Learning to compile information. Learning to just be organized and have the information, right? Because the internet's not your friend. All this stuff will be gone one day. It won't mean anything if you cannot prove it, right? All right. Next. So this is the beginning of the legal research. So once you're prepared to receive information, now you can start receiving information. The number one thing I do in my free time is law dictionaries, is read law dictionaries. I got 1,000,000 books. I read those books, but more than I read those books, I read those law dictionaries. Law dictionaries have been, I don't even know the first law dictionary I got. The first law dictionary I got was not, I think everybody found that one. I think they got somebody like copied and pasted a law dictionary one time, and then that's the law dictionary everybody found. But I think it was like Black's Law Fourth or something like that. I think everybody has that dictionary now. But the number one thing I do is read law dictionaries all day, especially now that I'm not working. That's all I do all day. I want to know what that word means. Okay, so people ask me all the time, what's the best law dictionary? There's no such thing as the best law dictionary. Dictionaries are, they're evidence of history. That's really what it is. So I got law dictionaries. I'll pull some up here. I got all law dictionaries from the early 1700s. I think 1708, 1706. Yeah, 1708 all the way to 2014. Law dictionaries. Somebody say law dictionaries. The most important thing you can do is rightly define a word. Define the word correctly. if you are subjected by the courts and a cop hands you a citation, and that citation has a code or a statute on it, okay, well, you're going to go look up that statute and you're going to go to the law dictionaries and verify every word, every operative word that is in those dictionaries. For those who are on the Patreon, you know, I don't even know no more. I think it's 26 or 27 law dictionaries that I have for download on there. And I verify everything. There's some things that, okay, I'm particularly interested in, and then some things I'm just like, I wonder what that word means. And sometimes I'll go through all the dictionaries and try to find that same word from as early as 1708 all the way to 2014. I just want to know what that word means. And then sometimes if I feel that word is necessary, then I'll go to the Google Docs and I'll copy and paste and organize that information in a way that's legible for me to understand, right? So law dictionaries are incredibly important. The older law dictionaries, so I divide history into two parts. We got before the Civil War and after the Civil War, right? So before the Civil War, as close as you can get to the date of the Constitution, which would be in 1787. So either right before or right after the Constitution is what I look for, especially if I'm trying to define a phrase that is exclusively in the Constitution, the United States Constitution, or if you're in one of the original 13 states, then I'm going to look up words that are as close as possible to the date of that original state constitution. And then I will define things based after the Civil War, right? So after the Civil War is where a lot of legislation, false or true, legislation has been introduced. And the thing about the new dictionaries is people say, well, what's the best dictionary? Well, there's no best dictionary. They're all just pictures of history. So, for instance, if you hypothetically get a traffic citation, okay, well, you need to find out when that statute was first implemented. Mainly this pertains to federal statutes, but you need to find out when that statute was first implemented, and then you'll go to the dictionary that came out after that piece of legislation came out, because they're going to add, if that word's not already defined, or if there's a new way of defining it, or they add it to the definition of a word. Okay, well, you won't know that until the next edition of the dictionary. So, for instance, I guess the Black's Law Dictionary would be the modern dictionaries that are out. Okay, so let's say, I don't know what year half of these came out, but okay, so let's say the Social Security Act. Okay, well, I want the dictionary that came out after the Social Security Act. That way, if I look up, I don't know if the word Social Security is in the dictionary, but this is hypothetical. If I'm going to that word, then I need that dictionary that came out afterwards. Does that make sense? So after the word has come out. As far as it relates to legislation, as far as it relates to constitutions, you need the older dictionary, because law's not new. Law is old. Okay, so older dictionaries before the Civil War are not going to have cases as their citations. For those who may have never seen a law dictionary, you're going to get to a law dictionary and at a word, they're going to tell you where they get their information from. So it'll be Constitution, for example. Okay. Well, I do this all the time. A Republican form of government. Okay. A Republican form of government or a Republican government is in the United States Constitution, right? Okay. Well, you get that phrase and you find that in the law dictionary, and they're going to give you, I haven't chased every rendition or every definition of that word in multiple dictionaries, but I want to say it's Black's Law 4th or 6th. That's the only ones I read for real, for new stuff. And they give you Supreme Court citations. Okay. So Supreme Court citations would be for the newer dictionaries that have come after the Civil War. Okay. because there's been enough history of Supreme Court cases that they now have a case explaining what that word means, versus before the Civil War, they will just have law books explaining what that word means. So I love the old dictionaries because they don't give you a Supreme Court case. They may give you an English case, because I got a Supreme Court case that says at the beginning of the country there were no Supreme Court cases that they could they were starting the country. So they only referenced English cases because that's all they knew, right? And so the older dictionaries will either have, primarily they'll just have law books on the topic. So if you want to learn about commerce or merchant law or the law merchant, okay, well, they'll give you, you look up that word, they'll give you a definition, and then they'll give you citations of law books that will go deeper into the meaning of that term. Versus the newer dictionaries will give you a Supreme Court case. Not always a Supreme Court case, but mainly a state or federal Supreme Court case explaining that topic. And then in these newer dictionaries, when you find these cases, they'll cite law books in the Supreme Court cases. So you can go find, that's a lot of times how I find a book, is the Supreme Court case will have, I need to talk about that. Supreme Court cases. I need to add that to there. All right. Case law. All right. And so the Supreme Court cases will have law books that the judges and the magistrates are citing. And I'm like, oh, well, they're citing that. I need to go find that book. Sometimes you can find them, sometimes you can't. If there are older books that they're citing, there's a good chance you'll find it. The newer books, especially state books are incredibly hard to find because they gatekeep. I'll tell y'all all the time, the state Supreme Court cases and the state info is more, they tell more information than the feds do. So when you go, like one time I tried to look up an Alabama evidence book. That book, you will not find that book. Unless you're an attorney, you will not find that book. Unless you're willing to drop some bread. They don't have it for sale. They ain't never had it for sale. They publish that and give it straight to whatever state bar association. And you probably never see it. Even the old books, I'm like, this book should be free somewhere. That book is nowhere. Like Louisiana, I try to find Louisiana law books all the time. Them books are not to be found. And then we all know the newer books, they don't tell you what you want to know. So it's the older information. Why? Because law's not new. So you have to find the older stuff. But as far as law dictionaries, the older law dictionaries, the ones before the Civil War, they're going to give you law book citations where other writers, either from England or American, depending on the date of the citation, they will give you law books to further study the topic. Okay. So just as an example, okay, when I first started learning this stuff, I started looking up passports because I thought that was interesting. Okay, well, they don't have no books on passports. Why? Because passport is not it's not a major topic to these people. So if you want to learn passports, you're going to have to learn marine insurance. And you're going to learn, all insurance is marine insurance. You'll learn that. There's no such thing as maritime insurance and regular insurance. There's no such thing as regular insurance. Insurance is a maritime term. Like, I didn't know that. Like, I mean, because they lie. They say, oh, well, they only do admiralty on water. Well, that's not true, because if we got a thing called car insurance or health insurance, well, that's all related. It's all admiralty. It's all marine insurance. They apply it to people when they're only supposed to be, which they technically are only applying it to the fictions, which are supposed to be related to actual ships. But that you'll get these dictionaries, you'll start getting the picture real quick. Okay, well, none of this, a passport is not for people. A passport is for a ship. That's why there are no books on passports, there are books on on marine insurance, and then they'll have a chapter on a specific type of insurance, and in order to activate this insurance, it will be manifest through a passport, and then they'll explain what the passport does and doesn't do, right? So you'll learn all that stuff through law dictionaries. I reiterate, law dictionaries, I spend more time than anything in law dictionaries. And then they'll give you a citation of the book. Hopefully you can find it for free. The hardest thing about the law dictionaries are the citations. It's hard to find them citations. One time I found a citation. That citation was 3 little abbreviations. And I finally found the book, and that book was 26 words. The name of that book was 26 words. I said, man, this is some BS. If we didn't have Google, you would never find this stuff, y'all. Sometimes you still can't find it on Google. It's like you got to try to, all right, I hope that's the name of the dude's last name, and it don't be, because they don't give you nothing. They don't give you nothing. Now, some of these guys, they have an abbreviation page, but they still don't tell you, because it's a dictionary. It's not going to have everything. So you still have to try to figure out the dude's whole name and the actual year that it was published and all this information to try to find those books to further dig deep into the situation, right? So just consider that when you get the old law dictionaries. All right, but the new law dictionaries, they will use state and federal Supreme Court cases. They'll use circuit case or whatever if it needs that explanation. But you'll have state Supreme Court cases and federal Supreme Court cases for the newer citations of the word. So they have a word, they'll explain the definition. If it's a significant word, then they'll have multiple paragraphs and sentences on it, and then they'll give you the citation of where they got that from. I know you want to buy the books. Do you think Harvard has all those books? Maybe. I have no clue. Let's see. I don't know. I don't know who has those books. I mean, most of the books that I found have been online or... Okay, so for instance, I got this book called The Law of Names. The Law of Names is an English book that it's apparently the only legal treatise on names, on the significance of names, on the law of names, right? And so, they may have been in other places, but the nearest one in the South was Louisiana at Tulane University. So I went to it's in New Orleans, and I went in there. I forgot when I went. It wasn't that long ago. It's probably last fall. I went in there and I took a picture. I probably shouldn't say this on the internet, but I took a picture of each page of that book because you can't buy that. That book doesn't exist anymore. That book's so old, and I'm not a thief, so I'm not physically taking the book out. And so I took a picture of each page of the book. And so, so it just depends. Maybe the Library of Congress has all those books, but it's the Library of Congress. And you can't just sit in there and just take pictures of the books all day. Yeah, some dude with a nice vest, bulletproof vest on is going to escort you out of there, right? So I don't know where you find some of those books. And some you probably won't find them unless you're in law schools. Or some of those books, they recreate those books and they don't put the information in there that you need to know. And so only the judges or the magistrates get that info. So eBay, I found a lot of books through eBay. Some old attorneys, some old judges retiring. He don't want them books no more. They put them up for sale. That's how I got one book. What's that book called? Bill of Particulars. Bill of Particulars. There's only one known book of legal treatise on the Bill of Particulars. they're not digitized. There are probably plenty of books, but they're not digitized. So I bought that book, sent it to be digitized, and now I am hypothetically the only one that has that book digitized that multiple people can download. So so yeah, that would be because somebody cited, I believe somebody cited that book in a law dictionary, and you try to go on eBay, you try to find it. Okay, well, they got that book for $400 because they know they don't want the average person trying to be able to get it. And so, thankfully, I'm not the average person who can't afford it. And so I get it, and then I pay to have it digitized. And so now, hypothetically, if you're on the Patreon, you're one of the only people in America outside of a law school. That book was written by a New York Supreme Court clerk. And it's apparently the only legal treatise on a bill of particulars. And so if you want to learn about a bill of particulars, they got that. All right? So this is all in the same stuff. So dictionaries, old dictionaries will give you the law book as the citation because they didn't have cases to refer to. And then new law dictionaries will primarily have a case that you can refer to verify that the definition is true. So, and I hear attorneys say this and they're not wrong. The law dictionary is not the law. People cite it, even they cite it, but that's not, you got to be able to cite the citation that they give, right? That guy who created that team of editors that created that law dictionary, they're not the sole explanation of information, and then that dictionary is not the sole explanation of a term. For every one word that's in that dictionary, there are a million books on it. And this is how deception creeps in, because those words are so deep and we don't even know the words we use every day, right? So that stuff is very important. So dictionaries, again, that's the number one thing I do. I verify, I cross-reference, I verify the citations. That's the number one thing I do as far as it relates to law dictionaries. Books, law books. So I guess this is... So again, you're going to use your preparedness, your organization to compile information. Information is very important. And in an age of ignorance, you could be the smartest dude in your state, smartest lady in your state. So flash drive, notepads, Google Docs. Flash drives, notepads, Google Docs. You learn Google Docs, you learn to compile information, you learn to organize information, just like I do on Patreon, for those who are on the Patreon. Okay, well, I got one topic called Admiralty and Maritime, and every time I find a case or every time I find a book, okay, well, I attribute it or connect it to that collection. I'm also doing that on Google. Google Docs, so that once I feel like I have enough information, for example, I turn them into books. Okay, this is my baby. Okay, so this is about the courts. Why? Because I verified all the information. I did all the homework. This is my homework on the courts. This is me. This is my book. I take this book everywhere. Everywhere. Every new state I'm in, if I leave the country and come back into it, this book comes with me. So all of this is just my homework. This is my research. This is my homework. I compiled all this stuff on a Google Doc, and as a result, this is my information, right? And you, for those who have the book, you share in that research, right? So, because one day there may not be access to a Google Doc, whatever they call it, right? So I got to have all this. I need this information. This information is for me. I got to read this stuff in front of a jury one day. You know what I mean? Not really, but this is my information. This is the result of my homework. Once I compiled enough information I felt like was necessary, I put it in a book. Now, I know how to make a book, and whatever. But you're no different. You can make you can take something to Kinko's and they'll create a little folder, a little I don't know what you call it, a little notebook thing. They'll give you a little plastic thing, give you some little binders in there, and you can make yourself a little notebook, and you can have the little Colorado book, right? And you can have a bunch of citations that'll be ready to go. And once, I'll get into this maybe later, but you learn pleadings, you learn to do legal writing and all that stuff. Okay, well, you got all these citations that you can use to verify that what you're saying is the truth, right? Nope, the Supreme Court said it in volume 41, page 1, okay? So all of that type of stuff, right? So this is the result of me doing practicing what I preach, right? This is my, let's see, I got this one on the courts. I got this one on commercial law, okay? That's not commercial law. This is land patents. This is land patent cases. So these are land patent cases. This is over, I don't think it's 300, but it's a lot of cases in here where this is all state and federal Supreme Court cases concerning land patents. And not all these cases they won. Some of them they lost, and you need to learn why they lost. Right? So this is another book that I got as a result of my homework. I said, nope, I'm going to need this offline one day. Right? So I verified, compiled all this information, and as a result, we got this book. Right? Got another one. This is a biblical view of commercial law. Okay, well, I want to know what commercial law look like. I want to know what's all concerning that stuff, the history of it. Every piece of information I find, I compile it on a Google document. And once I feel like I got enough information, I create a book out of it. And you can do the same. It ain't got to look like this. It can look like a little notebook. You know what I mean? So, a little binder. That's the word I'm looking for. All right. So, I got one more thus far. All right. This is my new one right here. Verified all the information. Had to double. They call it a double column on Google Docs. All right. This one, you got to have this stuff because they're going to try you. And you got to be ready. No, they said in the California Supreme Court, you know what I mean? Like, you got to be ready. This is all organization where you get to have verifiable facts. That these people, these scammers don't have this stuff. They be just yapping, don't have no evidence on nothing. All right. So compiling information, being organized is very important. So verifying information. Because you don't know that dictionary telling the truth. They could have just made that up. But if you don't go review the citation to see where they got it from, then you won't know that it's true. So law dictionaries, books, and cases. What's the question? What's the question? Yeah, the significant thing about these law dictionaries is they don't come up with the information. They always get that information from somewhere else. The older dictionaries, where'd they get that definition from? They got it from a law book from before that year came out, right? So it's always going back in time. Law's not new. You won't ever find a new law. There's no such thing as a new law. They may have a new way of implementing it, but what they call law is not new. Like I say it all the time. Your original state constitutions are the law, and that's it. They've never repealed those original state constitutions. Never. They can't. Like they say all the time, oh, well, during the Civil War, the states, they left the Union, they started a confederacy, and then after the Civil War, they got re-granted statehood. Okay, well, none of that's true. No, it's not possible for them to leave the Union right like that. So before the Civil War, they had the right to bear arms against foreign invaders. The Constitution's never given the feds permission to be in the states, especially over things that were already in the Constitution and that were already constitutional. And so Texas, South Carolina, Alabama, Louisiana, they have the right to bear arms and they have the right to protect themselves against foreign invaders. And so that's what they did. It's called the Union. They were the original 13 states were called and are a confederacy. So they weren't doing anything new. They were doing what the Constitution said they could do, right? And so and you know what I mean? So I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah. So do I take it that we're not free? We're automatically citizens though? Well, there's no such thing as a citizen since the Civil War. The 10th Amendment says whatever has not been given to the feds or to the states is left on the people. Okay, well, there's no such thing as state governments no more. You haven't, in this lifetime, you've never had a state government. You're under foreign occupation. See, if you got one of them law dictionaries, you need to look up the word fiction. Okay, fictions are not real. You don't even need a dictionary to know that. They're not real. All right. You can be as free as you want to be. You can be as free as you have the ability to take care of yourself without the system. So the question of freedom is, okay, well, can I live without the system? You start studying the word commerce in the dictionary. You're gonna lead back to the word merchant. Okay, you go to the word merchant. It's gonna lead you all the way back to these people called Phoenicians. Okay, you study the Phoenicians. You're gonna lead you all the way back to a land called Canaan. And these people called Canaanites. Okay, and so you're gonna learn commerce is a body of private law. Private law. It's not American. It's not English. It didn't come out yesterday. And so whenever you admit that you cannot live without commerce, then we're admitting we're not free by virtue of ourselves, not virtue of, oh, well, they call me a United States citizen. No. There's no, first of all, none of that is admissible in court. They don't bring you into court over citizenship. They bring you into court based on where you're domiciled. So all the scammers, all the feds on the internet saying, "Oh well, really, you're a dual citizen because this the 14th Amendment and they made us all dual citizen." No, they didn't make us nothing. They can't. They don't have no power to do that. It's not. The federal Constitution is talking to federal things. So if it never applied before there was such thing as a 14th Amendment, then it wouldn't apply to the states after there was such thing as a 14th Amendment. The same with the 16th Amendment. Right? This is what happens when the Constitution's next. This is what happens when we don't read the Constitution and we don't define the words rightly in the Constitution. So what happened at the Civil War? The Civil War, they took over the state governments and they never left. Okay? So that's we're under foreign occupation, but that don't make anything that they do lawful. And when people don't know their history and don't know their heritage and don't know the law, okay, well, this is what we're left with. You have to learn the freaking common law of England from some black dude on Twitter or on TikTok or whatever. Okay, well, yep, we're in trouble. So, all right, constitutions. Especially as it relates to dictionaries, since dictionaries are probably the most important thing, and then the citations of the dictionaries are the most important things, you need to look up, especially if you're on the Patreon, you need to define the words in the Constitution. You need to define the words in the Constitution. I read it all the time. The United States Constitution and your state and federal constitution cannot be interpreted without reference to the Constitution or without reference to the common law of England. It cannot be understood. Okay, well, how do you know that? Because you would have to define the words in the Constitution or the phrases in the Constitution and then go find the significance of those phrases in the common law of England. Does that make sense? So, especially these Bill of Rights. I read this today. I found this today. I think it was the Supreme Court of... Let's see. The Supreme Court of... It wasn't Georgia. It was Michigan. The Supreme Court of Michigan said, the truth is, the Bill of Rights in the American constitutions have not been drafted for the introduction of new law. I keep telling y'all there's no such thing as new law, but to secure old principles. They said the Bill of Rights in American constitutions, what American constitutions? The Michigan Constitution, have not been drafted for the introduction of new law, but to secure old principles. They assume that the existing principles of the common law are ample for the protection of individual rights. Right? So when you go to your state constitution and you go to your state, what they call Declaration of Rights or Bill of Rights, then you're going to find and define those phrases in a law dictionary. And you're going to take notes of them. You're going to copy. You're going to research. You're going to verify. And then you're going to find those principles and how they did it in the common law of England. Like, for instance, I tell you all the time, okay, a Republican form of government. Well, what's a Republican form of government? All right, a Republican form of government is where the sovereignty is vested in the people. They call that the common law doctrine of sovereign immunity. Okay, well, you got to go study common law sovereign immunity to know what that even means. It means that a sovereign cannot be brought into the courts that it created by way of the Constitution without its consent. And people tell me all the time, well, brother, I'm going to challenge jurisdiction because they recognize my sovereign status. Okay, well, if you were sovereign, you wouldn't have been in there. They wouldn't have been able to create a case. Because there's a difference between somebody who show up on their computer and people who don't show up on their computer, right? And that would be evidence of sovereignty. Right? Now, I will say there's a huge difference federally than with the states. But most of y'all just deal with state issues. But federal, that is a different monster. And I'm not talking about that tonight. But as far as state issues, yeah, you don't get up in there unless you've consented. It's not possible. That's another word. Here's some homework. Once you get on Patreon, you download all these law dictionaries. You need to go through each definition of the word presumption. That's a nasty word. It's good and bad. Not good in a sense. I mean, you want to know what's going on in the world? Everybody speaks in presumptions. Everybody speaks in presumptions. Your favorite scammer on TikTok, everybody speaking in presumptions. And the definition of presumption is it is evidence unless you can rebut it. Unless you can prove them wrong. That's why I say you got to be organized. You got to be ready. You got to keep your head on a swivel because they're going to lie straight to your face. People, I'll never forget this guy on here said, hey, brother, in Indiana, I tried to tell them about the common law of England. They act like they never heard of the common law of England. I said, well, could you prove them wrong? He said, no. I said, oh, well, that's what happens. Because what's the law of Indiana? The common law of England. How would you know that? You would have done the homework and been able to cite a Supreme Court case from 2026 that say, no, the common law of England says. And they'd have dismissed that case because they'd have been caught in a lie in front of the public. Like people tell me the other day, bro, they act like they don't do admiralty. Okay, well, could you prove them wrong? Right? Because how does admiralty work? Admiralty works in rem and in personam. And no state can confer jurisdiction upon its courts by acting in a proceeding in rem. Okay, well, could you prove that they were doing admiralty without talking about the flag and the gold fringes? Could you prove them wrong? No, I couldn't prove them wrong. Okay, well, That's why this stuff is important. You got to be able to say, no, y'all full of, you know what I mean? You're full of stuff because the Supreme Court of whatever state you're in says, and then boom. What happened to all the encyclopedias? What do you mean what happened to them? I don't understand that question. All right, so your state constitution, you need to read it. People say all the time, uh, well, which one? I got, I got, the my state's got six versions of the Constitution. You need to study all of them. You need to go over all of them. If you're in one of the original 13, you got a lot of homework to do because they got a lot of revisions of that Constitution, don't they? I think North Carolina got like 9 revisions of that Constitution. Yep, you got to go over all of them because they haven't repealed anything in the original Constitution. They can't. Not without renaming the state, which they can't do. Not without lying or not without admitting they took over the states. Uh, but so your state constitutions are incredibly significant. Um, so your state constitution, you need to go over the Bill of Rights over each revision of your state's constitution. And I don't know, I couldn't prove it as fast, but California says this. California, I could prove it pretty fast, I think. Let me see. California. California. What encyclopedias are you talking about that have been destroyed? California Constitution. California. I won't find it in time. California. Never find it in time. California. Oh, here we go. The 1970s encyclopedia. Um, that's not what I'm talking about. But oh, there we go. Okay, so they said this is exactly what I need. Let's see here. They said the present constant. This what year is this? This is in the 1800s. This is in the late 1800s. They said the present Constitution of California has been substituted. Our present state government is a continuance of that established when the original Constitution was adopted. They said we got new stuff in the Constitution, but we have the same powers in the original as the original Constitution. So they never got rid of there's not a piece of paper that exists that said they did away with the original constitutions. Just like there's no piece of paper that said the states were readmitted into the Union after the Civil War. It doesn't exist. That they made it up. They want you to believe they got all this power. They've never done it. Does that make sense? So the states didn't leave the Union at the Civil War and then got granted statehood. The Constitution doesn't give the federal government power to do these things. It's not possible to be done. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. So read your state constitutions. Read every revision, every edition of your state constitutions. They are incredibly important, especially if you live or were born in one of the original 13 states. You will find stuff in those constitutions that you can verify through these definitions and dictionaries and cases that will explain all of these things. Okay? All of this stuff is in case law. All right. Commentaries. There is a commentary on everything, on every topic, on every major topic. Now, as far as it means learning the law, let me exit some tabs here. Here we go. All right, we got some commentaries here. Commentaries are explanations of different legal topics. Okay, so the best or the most amount of information would be Edward Cook, Commentaries on the Laws of England. No, Edward Cook, Institutes on the Laws of England. Does that make sense? Edward Cook, Institutes on the Laws of England, in 4 parts. It's over 6 books, but it's in 4 parts. So it'll be part 1, maybe 2 books. Part 2 might be 1 book. Part 3 might be 2 books. Part 4 might be, 1 book. However, it equals to about 6 books. Edward Cook, Thomas Jefferson said, if you want to learn the law, start with Edward Cook's Institutes on the Laws of England. Those books were written. Edward Cook was an English judge. And that dude created the Institutes on the Laws of England in the early 1600s, and they are still cited in state Supreme Courts today. I read cases all day, and they freaking say, yep, Edward Cook said, Lord Cook said, Sir Edward Cook said. Because they, remember, they can't do nothing new. They don't have no choice but to keep going back to England to see how to do things. Because law's not new, law's old, right? So Edward Cook's Institutes on the Laws of England in 4 parts. So it's in 4 parts, but it's like 6 books, okay? You understand that? Edward Cook is spelled C-O-K-E, like Coke, but it's pronounced Cook. Next is William Blackstone. William Blackstone would have been the best explanation of common law as far as it relates to modern English. So William Blackstone was also an English judge. Edward Cook didn't even like the colonies. He said in his first book, he's got a commentaries called Commentaries on the Laws of England. They're in 4 books. Let me see. Yep, the first book is on the rights of persons. The second one is on the rights of things. The second one is private wrongs. The fourth one is public wrongs. And each of those books, the first book, he says that the colonies and other territories of England or Britain are not entitled to the common law of England. But the founders and the framers of the Constitution didn't care. When after the Revolutionary War, they did a survey and found out that more Americans bought those books than anybody in England. He dang near just wrote it for the Americans. And most of the explanation of law is found in William Blackstone's Commentaries on the Laws of England. Now, you can find those books for free, but they have updated the English on them. Oxford University has updated those books. They did not update Edward Cook's. They don't want you reading them books. So the latest, I forgot to say this, the latest translations, I wouldn't call them translations, but the latest updates, because those books were written in the 1600s, the latest that I like are in the 1830s. So I think they may have came out with a version in the 1860s. And you could probably find them for free for download. But the best legible reading, which, we don't I don't read ancient English, but I'm trying to learn these books. Okay, so 1830s would have been perfect. It'd been right before the Civil War. It's good, solid English, right? Um, and then William Blackstone, Commentaries on the Laws of England, they were written in 1765 through 1770. So that was right before the Revolutionary War. And and then they updated those. Those came out in like 2009. So those are great books. If you can buy those books physically and read them, that would be perfect. You will they William Blackstone explains every major body of law. You want to learn the law? Remember, when the country started, they didn't have no law schools, y'all. There was no law schools when the country started. There was no bar association. If you wanted to learn the law and you wanted to be a lawyer back in the day, they would give you these books. They would give you a stack of Edward Cook's. They would give you a stack of William Blackstone, and then they would give you a stack of English cases pertaining to particular topics or a particular time frame. And you would have to read and write reports on those. That was it. You had to study under somebody. There was no law schools. You understand that? So this is perfect for somebody who is through and fed up with ignorance and you want to learn the law. Okay, well, they're not teaching the law in law schools today. They're teaching commerce. First of all, again, we don't know what the word school means. The word school is what? It is a ship for merchant training. It's a vessel for seamanship. Okay, well, they didn't have none of that when the country started. They got a stack of books and said, get to it. You got to read, you got to write. So this is all important information. You want to know the ancient principles about something? William Blackstone is going to explain. You want to know what admiralty is? You know what equity is? You want to know what commercial law is? You want to know all that stuff? William Blackstone is going to teach you. He was a judge. He's not. These aren't nobodies. These were giants in their day. The fact that he didn't even like the colonies and all the colonists bought his books, pretty significant. They said, yeah, we don't care. We need those books. And then when they got their own country, they implemented those principles because that helped them understand the law, right? All right. So that's Edward Cook, William Blackstone, and then the next one is James Kent. James Kent was the first American judge to write commentaries on American law. So you can find these. These are James Kent Commentaries on the Laws of England. That's literally, they are in 4 books as well. And they got later renditions. I couldn't find those, but the earliest renditions or editions were 1826, I think. 1826, 1828. Good, solid English in there. All right. Now, Louisiana. We're not going to leave you behind. Louisiana, if you were born or live in Louisiana and you don't plan on leaving Louisiana, we got this thing called the Roman Code. All right. So for those who know, Louisiana was not founded on the common law of England like the other 49 states. Now, as far as it relates to criminal law, what they call a crime is supposed to be governed by the common law of England because they can't go beyond the boundaries of the federal constitution. But if you plan on living in Louisiana and staying there and having kids there, okay, well, you're going to want to learn the Roman law. The Roman law is essentially what they call the Justinian Digest or the Code of Justinian. Justinian was a Roman emperor, and in his day, all the territories that he conquered, he would send out what we now know to be bar members and agents to go compile all the information from the territories that he conquered. All right. And then they compiled those and translated those into their language because they would conquer nations that didn't speak. I don't know what they spoke Roman. And so they translated all of those laws from the different nations and then they compiled them in a way that they translated and compiled them in a way that benefited a Roman dictator. So in our world we would say, oh well, they removed all the due process stuff out of it that would benefit the people, and they left in the things that favored government power and government control. That's why we're supposed to be actively against the Roman law, right? Or the civil law, right? So they call this thing Roman law. If you want to learn the Roman law for Louisiana, or anybody, this is part of the law too. It's called the Corpus Juris Civilis. All right. Now, I forgot how they got it. So they got it in 4 volumes as well. Each of the 4 volumes, the Digest of Justinian is, they'll have these books are huge. So the Digest of Justinian is, like say, it'll be in book 1 through 50. And then in one of those books, it'll be 19, 20, 30 citations in there of what they call Roman maxims. And they've been translated. I have the English versions of them on Patreon, so you can download them. I have the English translations of these things. But they have Roman maxims that were in Latin, and then they've been translated to English. Right, so they'll have book 1, chapter 3, section 17, and then that will be a citation of whatever that thing is saying. So as it applies to Louisiana, you would want those, and then you would compare it to the Code of Louisiana. That's what they call the law in Louisiana. Right, so our law in the other states are the common law of England. We will primarily find those in Supreme Court cases. But in Louisiana, you're not primarily going to find those there. You're primarily going to find Louisiana law in the Louisiana Code. Napoleonic law is the Roman law. Napoleon was French. French has always been under Roman control. The Napoleonic Code is the Roman code. It was just translated into French. That's because they were French, and that's where Louisiana came from. But that's Napoleonic law is Roman law. And so you want to know the Roman principles, then I have the Digest of Justinian. Because all the emperors that came after him would just be applying these principles. Like the same way we go to Edward Cook's Institutes on the Laws of England. Okay, well, all the Romanist attorneys, they go to Justinian Code, right? So when they create the United States Code or your state codes, well, they mirror them off of how the Roman Code is. It's literally the same thing. All right, now. Somebody said, what about Kentucky? So this is next. So state Supreme Court cases. You want to learn your state law? State Supreme Court cases. How do you find state Supreme Court cases? Good luck. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, is try to find state Supreme Court cases. But I will teach you how to find the citations. Now, I will say this. There used to be a website. Now, my research has gotten harder because this website no longer exists. There used to be a website called Casetext. Casetext, you could literally just go to the website and just search cases. You could find, okay, I want to learn Kentucky. You could literally just click Kentucky, search some phrases related to some certain topics, and boom, they would give you a list of cases that had those phrases, and you could read those cases. And they would give you the citation, and that was the only free, searchable, reliable, searchable case law website to search for cases. And I believe it was last year or the year before last, Westlaw bought that website and then decommissioned it. So now if you want to search for cases without having to buy all these law books, okay, well, it costs like $400 a month, 300. I think it was 300 if you wanted all the 50 states and federal. And so I used to have to pay, I didn't pay it long, but I had to pay like $300 a month to try to find cases. Okay. But you don't have to do that. Well, it's not always easy. But as far as just reading cases, here's how you read cases. Okay. Where I find cases, so now I can't go searching for cases without paying for them. Now I have to know what case I'm looking for, and that becomes harder. Okay, so there's two things I'm going to tell you to do, and not every state has this access. The first thing, every state does have this access, but it sucks. So here's the thing that sucks. Okay, where I find cases is from Court Listener. Somebody type Court Listener in the chat. Courtlistener.com. For anybody who's on Patreon, you'll see. If you want to see that case that I just cited, it's got a Court Listener link right under it, right? Okay. You can't search for cases in Court Listener. You have to know what case you are looking for and find the case on Court Listener. It does not have search abilities. You can't pay for search abilities on Court Listener. All right, so what you have to do is you have to know case citations. This is very important because half of what I see on the internet is people citing bad cases. And then from the attorney side of it, they don't give you the case that would make it easier to find. Okay, so this is how you cite a Supreme Court case, federal or state. Okay, you start with the volume number. The volume number. So you'll see a case. Let me see. Let me find this case real quick. Boom. Okay. So you got Parsons, Bedford, Breedlove, and Robeson. This case came out in 1830. All right. This is a United States Supreme Court case. Now, I'm not finna know that entire case number or that entire case name. The case name is irrelevant. The case name is irrelevant. I don't care about the case name. The case name is irrelevant. What I want to know as far as it relates to Supreme Court cases is what is the volume number and the page number. Because that volume is an actual book of Supreme Court cases. So for instance, this is the federal Supreme Court, right? So if I wanted to find this case, then I would need to find volume 28 of the United States Supreme Court reports. And you can find those on Google. And then the page number would be after the US. So it'll say 28 US 433. And then it'll have a year, right? Okay. Well, how do I find that case? Because I be seeing these people, and I be seeing some of y'all be posting cases, and them don't be the right citations, and then you find the citation and it don't say what that case said. It's what y'all say that case say. And this is incredibly important. Because when you try to argue that the Supreme Court said, and then they go look up them cases, and I don't know if y'all seen, these people got computers now. These judges and these magistrates, they got the computer right there. What's the case number? No, that ain't on here. No, nope. And they'll throw your whole argument away. They don't want to hear it. You giving them bad citations, they don't want to hear that. All right, so volume number, page number. Volume number, page number, and in between the volume number and the page number is the jurisdiction. So if it's New Mexico, you'll see a N.M. If it's Michigan, you'll see a MICH. If it's a Florida Supreme Court case, it'll be FLA. If it's Kentucky, it'll be volume 28, page 433, and then there'll be a KY in the middle, right? If it's a Tennessee, it'll have a 10 in the middle, right? It'll be your state's actual abbreviation. Not always, but if you're from New York, it'll be a NY in the middle, right? So volume number, page number. Somebody say that. Volume number, page number. Volume number, page number. Volume number, page number. And you can verify the case. When I first started seeing cases, I didn't know what that meant. I don't know what that means. How do you implement the cases? You read them. You read them. You read the case. The case explains a concept of the law. You read it. You read the whole page. You read the whole book. You implement it by digesting the info. In court, you're not supposed to be in court. I'm not helping nobody in court. You're not supposed to be in court. See, this their thing again. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. You're not supposed to be in court. Who are the judges? Who are the judges in court? Okay, you explain this to. You're not supposed. I'm not talking to people who are trying to be in court all the time. I'm talking to people who want to know the law. So you explain, you learn the law, and then you explain it to the judges, who are the jury, not the guys in the black robe. If you have to because you're in a circumstance where you are subjected by the courts, then you can use these in pleadings to explain a concept of the law that magistrate already know, but he don't care nothing about. Right? So you implement it by reading it. You have to know it. So whenever you see some scammer or anybody saying they're citing a case and, oh, well, they said this. Okay, well, you got to be able to find that case. And you got to be able to verify. Half of this stuff is just verifying that it said what it said. Like people say, oh, well, that Black's Law Dictionary don't mean nothing. If you can't know where they got that from, because those people didn't know the law either. They had to find it. I say this all the time. You start studying law, you're going to end up at the Bible. That's where you can end up in an atheistic law school and they're going to teach you about Solomon and the Phoenicians. I'm like, wait, I thought this stuff was fake to y'all. Oh, they lied. Yep. Why are y'all talking about Solomon in law books? What do you mean the Phoenicians were the carrier for the wise Solomon? What do you mean? I thought Solomon wasn't real to you, atheist. They know this stuff is true. They just lie to our face every day. No, that's not why. But the Supreme Court cases, how do you find them? Start with Volume 1. Volume 1, Kentucky Supreme Court Reports. You may not find them. These things are not easy. I'm just telling you. If you can go to a law library in your state, you can start reading those books. Excuse me. Some of them have, you can download the PDFs. You can download the PDFs and then you can search them. I think I found Florida's. I think I found Colorado's. I think I found Georgia's. I've been finding Volume 1. I found Tennessee's. Okay, and you know what I do when I found the download of them? Okay, well, I search. I want to search common law. I want to search Magna Carta. I want to search law of the land. I want to search, sovereignty. I'm looking up all these phrases. Then I'm going to read that case and see what it's talking about. Sometimes it ain't got what you're looking for. Sometimes it's got everything you're looking for in there, right? So Volume 1, volume number, page number, volume number, page number, volume number, page number, volume number, page number. That's how you read and find a case. That's case law. Case law, half the case law is citation. How do you find it? Read it. What it say? They say these judges be challenging people. Well, what's that case about? You ain't read it. You don't know what it's talking about. And so that stuff is very important. So state Supreme Court cases is where you'll find the law. Is where you'll find explanations. What you really should be looking for is the Bill of Rights inside of those Supreme Court cases. You'll search the phrase unconstitutional. Okay, and they're gonna tell you what's unconstitutional. You're going to see law of the land. Okay, they're going to tell you what's the law of the land, what's not law of the land. That's where you're going to find all these William Blackstone, Edward Cook, James Kent. You're going to find all those. They're going to keep talking about those guys, all these cases. All right, well, volume 1 would be the very first Supreme Court reports of your state. If you got to go to a law library to find them, then do that. Or if you can find them on the internet, then do that. Obviously, that would be easier. But good luck. These things aren't easy. So on Court Listener, you can do that. Now, Court Listener is not amazing all the time. But you could find volume 1 on Court Listener of the Kentucky Supreme Court reports. But it's two things that's wrong with that. They scan those pages and they don't verify that they've been scanned properly. And so, or they redact stuff on those pages and they don't include them on the website. So it's stuff that are in the actual Kentucky, just as an example, Kentucky Supreme Court reports that are not on Court Listener, right? So it'll say, you'll see somewhere that a case said something, and then you'll go to Court Listener and it won't have none of them words on there. You're like, something ain't right. And then some of the cases, they'll let you download the PDF, and then you read the PDF and it's black all over it. They ain't got nothing to say on there because they don't redacted so much information because they don't want you seeing what's in them Supreme Court cases. Yep. So this is very important. So if you can go to your nearest law library and find volume whatever of your state Supreme Court reports, and just, once a month, take a day, see what you can find in there. That would be optimal. Now, next is, again, I already said this is very hard, is trying to find books exclusive to your state. So if you want to try to find if they got the Kentucky Common Law book on a particular subject, Kentucky Trial by Jury, good luck. But those things are very hard to find. But you can try to find commentaries on a specific law topic, and that would be potentially helpful, because in those commentaries, just like in these commentaries I've listed, they're going to cite where they get that information from. Does that make sense? So you're just doing verifying after verifying after verifying. You're just saying that it says, are the reports done by the year? Not always. It depends. Sometimes they cover a couple years to kind of consolidate space. Some states they didn't have a lot of cases that year. Some they may have had a lot, so they just included a lot of years. So I would try to find out when the first year of the Supreme Courts got set up in your state, and then try to go through there. But on Court Listener, you can find, they'll tell you the year. So again, you can find volume 1 of the Florida Supreme Court reports on Court Listener. You just have to read through all those cases. You can't search them. You have to actually read, and and they'll tell you what years for each case. They got them. Now, when I say they got them, they may not have every single case, but they acknowledge that a volume 1 of the Florida Supreme Court reports exist, and they may have or they may not have all those cases. You would have to try to find those actual books. Virginia is a great example of this. Okay, let me go to Virginia just to prove this to you, because there's cases that are not on Court Listener or on anywhere on the internet. Where's Virginia? Virginia. All right, Virginia's got 2 cases that I know are nowhere. In a law dictionary, you look up the phrase posse comitatus, and No, I think that's Pennsylvania. One is let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Well, no, Virginia has two. Okay. Virginia has a case that does not exist. And it explains that people who go to prison are slaves of the state. And that's the only case that I found that explains that. And Virginia has that case. And it's a notable case. I see it flying around a lot. But you can't find that phrase inside of the case. If you find that case on the internet, it does not have that phrase. You have to find the actual law book or the Virginia Supreme Court report that has that in there. And then I found that book and it says what it says in the actual report. It don't say that on the internet where you can find it. You know what I mean? And then there's another one on due process about property taxes. They don't have that case on the internet. When I say on the internet, I mean on a case looking website, a case finding website. And then there's one on Pennsylvania where they talk about the Posse Comitatus Act, that the sheriff has the power to summon the people of the county to fight an insurrection or whatever. Okay, let me go to Pennsylvania. That case is not on the internet. You have to find that actual book. Yep, the sheriff. So in all the law dictionaries, they cite this case on the Posse Comitatus, and you cannot find that case. They don't want you to find it, and so I found it. Yep, I put it on Patreon, and I said cannot find this case on a court website, but I found it, and it explains the power of the sheriff and all that it entails, right? And so, yada yada yada. All right, so understand this stuff in finding your state Supreme Courts. You're going to be better off going to your state library, your nearest law library. Now, not what I'm about to go over now are law encyclopedias. Not every state has this, but it is important. Let me see. Where's that? What am I looking for? State encyclopedias. Homework. State law encyclopedias. Okay. So this is easier for people who have state law encyclopedias. This is not easy for people who do not have state law encyclopedias. Okay. So I say here, if you live or were born in these states, you need to be well acquainted with these encyclopedias. I said we cannot afford these books. For example, I say the Florida Jurisprudence Law Series or Law Encyclopedia is 60 grand for the complete series. All right, so I say you might find some older volumes on eBay from a retired attorney or a retired judge. So they said that you typically, well, I said that, I wrote it. All right, so these are the states with law encyclopedias. California Jurisprudence is the name of the encyclopedia. Colorado Law Annotated is the name of the encyclopedia. Florida Jurisprudence is the name of the encyclopedia. Georgia Jurisprudence is the name of the encyclopedia. And Georgia has an older one called the Encyclopedia of Georgia Laws. I can't find those anywhere. But they're probably in a Georgia law library. All right. Illinois is called Illinois Law in Practice. Indiana has an Indiana Law Encyclopedia. Uh, Louisiana is called the Louisiana Civil Law Treatise. I actually found those the other day, and they're trash. And Maryland has one called the Maryland Law Encyclopedia. Michigan has the Michigan Law in Practice Encyclopedia. Uh, Mississippi is called the Encyclopedia of Mississippi Law. New Hampshire Practice, New Jersey Practice, the New York Jurisprudence. They have a thing called the North Carolina Index. They have the Ohio Jurisprudence. They have the Pennsylvania Law Encyclopedia. They have the South Carolina Jurisprudence. They have the Tennessee Jurisprudence. They have the Texas Jurisprudence. And they have the Virginia Jurisprudence and West Virginia Jurisprudence. Okay, those are law encyclopedias. The benefit to law encyclopedias is that they are categorized by topics. So if you want to look for a topic and see what they got to say about it, okay, the same way those law dictionaries are going to give you Supreme Court cases as their citation on where they get that definition from, the same way with these law encyclopedias. They're going to have an explanation of the topic, but they're going, every sentence, almost every sentence is going to have a state Supreme Court case where they get their information from, or a law book too. It just depends on the topic. So if you want to know about, the first thing you should do is go look up the Constitution. They'll have the letter C. So an encyclopedia will be volume 1 through 30, I don't know. And volume 1 will be the letter A, okay? And volume 2 or 3 will be C through D, and then E through F, you know what I mean? So it'll be number correlating with the alphabet. So volume 1 would be whatever the topic of law in the letter A is, right? So the first thing you should find is, if they don't have a topic on the common law of England, then you're going to go to the topic of the Constitution of that state. So you'll go to New York Constitution, or New York, or just Constitution, and then you will read what they have to say on the New York Constitution, and you're going to copy all those cases. And then when you get back to the house, you can verify those cases on Case Listener or Court Listener. Does that make sense? So these encyclopedias knock out half the work of trying to find a specific subject. They've already done the work. That's why they're so expensive. Like the Florida jurisprudence is 60 grand if you want brand new copies of all the volumes. What is Biographical Encyclopedia of the Commonwealth of Kentucky? I have no idea, bro. I do not live in Kentucky. I'm sorry. But they don't say that Kentucky has a legal encyclopedia. That may be like, I mean, I don't know. You would have to find that and read it and see what the description of it is. Or just try to find Kentucky law books. eBay is a good place. Some attorney's retiring in Kentucky, and he's getting rid of all those books, and he's going to chill by the beachfront. Okay, so, but this is just some stuff, just a mindset to have when you're researching how to find information, right? It's stuff that you can't find everything on Google. I hope you know that by now. They're not going to tell you nothing. They're going to lie straight to your face. And these attorneys have created enough blogs on different subjects that's the first thing that pulls up. So when you search a topic, you're not finding the topic there. So if you want to get past the fluff or the lie, you either go straight to a law dictionary, or if your state has an encyclopedia, go to the encyclopedia. Also, they have, also in these law dictionaries, every state is in there. Every state. Now, depending on the year of those law dictionaries, they may have, if your state was a territory at the time, then they'll address it as a territory. So you would go to a later dictionary, and it'll go over your constitution and all the powers of your state. So if you live in Florida, try to look up Florida in a law dictionary. It'll have a bunch of stuff on Florida. What else? Case law. Yeah, that's it. That's really it. The state is weird. They make rules as they go. So that's why you got to read the Kentucky Constitution. So the first things first, you need to read your state's constitution. You need to read every version of your state's constitution, because that's not your state that's talking. Your state already talked. It did it once through the original state constitution. Here's what you need to look up. You need to look up the Kentucky Resolves. That's a conversation between Kentucky and Thomas Jefferson. I believe Thomas Jefferson was the president at the time. So yeah, look up the Kentucky Resolves. You need to find those books. You need to buy those books. And you need to find that. And you need to be able to quote it with your eyes closed. The Kentucky Resolves. Yeah, that's it. That's really what I got. Any questions? And this Patreon, I'm not lying to y'all, is a great resource. Every time I find a case related to a state, or if it's related to a constitutional topic, then I compile that information and I put it on there. And you have the link. So people think these cases, because I put them on there, that they're easy to find. No, sometimes it takes me all day to find a case. Any books on Ohio? Here's what I have. I forgot I was going to go over this. I have commentaries on all the state constitutions. All but 3. I have 47 states. I don't have Missouri. I don't have Pennsylvania. And I don't have... I forgot what other... Actually, I would have it on there. Pennsylvania, Missouri, and Oregon. They did not make them. Oxford University, Oxford University is like in England or something like that, but whoever their editors were in America created commentaries on all the state constitutions, and I have them all. I paid $100 for almost each of those. So if there's 47 states, how much did I pay for all of those commentaries? So yes, I do have law books on Ohio. I have the Ohio State Constitution commentary. What year did that come out? Ohio. Yep. Ohio State Constitution commentary. Yep. 450 pages. Common law is mentioned over 26 times in the Ohio Constitution commentary. The Ohio Bill of Rights. See, they said at common law, the traffic in intoxicating liquors was lawful business. And then they give you an Ohio Supreme Court case about the issue. All available on Patreon, absolutely. So if you live in Florida, let's see what I got on Florida. So I got the commentary on the Florida Constitution. Then I got 2 of them, because some of them they came out with multiple years. Where's Florida at? No, I only got one. It came out in 2017. And then what else do I have on Florida? I got a couple law books on Florida because somebody asked me for them and I found them. So let's see. Yeah, Florida Library. Let's see what we got. I got the history of Florida. I got habeas corpus in Florida. I got the Florida jurisprudence, volume 10, constitutional law. It's an old version, which is still good. The older, the better. And then I got volume Florida jurisprudence, volume 9 on the common law, which is only 3 pages, but it addressed more issues than that. But that book contains the volume on constitutional law and common law. And then I got one on habeas corpus. And then I got one on the history of Florida. And so I bought those books, had them digitized, and then uploaded them to Patreon. Like somebody was looking for something in Tennessee. I found some books for them in Tennessee. Let's see. Tennessee Library. Let's see. Tennessee law books. Yep. The land laws of Tennessee. They got apparently they got this whole thing is they got a whole thing about the history of Tennessee, and they got like 9 volumes. I couldn't find one volume, but they got all type of stuff related to Tennessee. Patreon, the link to it is at the top of my TikTok page. So you go to my TikTok page, it should be the only link there. What else? Oh, I also have like a regular library. I got a bunch of stuff. I keep forgetting I got all this stuff. I got so many books on here, y'all. You wouldn't believe it. Let's see. I got books on the common law, federal courts, grand jury, common law court handbook, uh, Second Amendment, Second Amendment. I got all type of books. I got the Erwin Ramos School of Law. I got a criminal defendant's Bible. I forgot I got these books. I don't know if I can say that word, but the I got all type of defendants handbooks, lawsuits. You want to learn how to do a lawsuit? Okay, there you go. They got a book called Beating Up on Debt Collectors. I forgot I had that book. Something about loans. I got books nobody got, y'all. You would not believe. You might not know those books were existing to believe them, but yeah, I got a lot of books. That lawsuit cookbook, uh, the criminal defendant's Bible. Oh yeah, that's a good book. I'm gonna try to reproduce that. That dude passed away, so I'm gonna try to. I'll probably never get to it, but I'll try to reproduce that book one day. Um, let's see. I got a bunch of stuff. That's one. I forgot I got these books. Yeah, you need down. That's why I say you gotta have a flash drive. You need Google Docs. Yeah, this is all on Patreon. Most of what I read, y'all, is on Patreon. I got land patent books. I forgot about that. No, I didn't forget about that, but I forgot to mention it. I got how many books? One, two, three, four, five, six law books on land patents and land laws. And y'all ever heard of Ron Gibson, the land patent guy? Well, that dude passed away last winter. Not last winter, last summer in July, I think. And I didn't know this. Everybody has his land patent book, but he came out with 2 books on land. And thankful to God, I ordered them, I guess, before he passed away because I didn't know those books existed. So I'm the only dude, and this isn't about me. I'm just saying, I'm the only dude that's got a searchable version of his land patents books, and he has another book called "You Are Not a Slave" by Ron Gibson. Uh, and then, and then I got other books on land patents and land law. I forgot I got all this stuff. I got books on admiralty. I got books on common law. Let's see. I told you I'm the only one that's got a book on the bill of particulars outside of an attorney. Got a book on sheriffs. Got a book on the trial by jury, the petite jury, false arrest and imprisonment. I forgot I got this. I got a self-study course on common law and statutory law, court access, how to navigate the courts. I got some encyclopedias, Corpus Juris Secundum, the law and practice on the bill of particulars. I'm the only one that's got that book. I'm the only one that's got that book digitized. Somebody's probably got that book, but so yeah, all that stuff you could just be downloading. You can be in them books. Every time you sit on the toilet, just get to reading. And I pay lots of money for these books, y'all. And to have them digitized costs even more. It's very expensive to have a book digitized. Especially a law book. A law book ain't 40 pages. You know what I mean? A law book, hundreds of pages. Hundreds of pages. Let's see. I got more books on grand juries and then all throughout the states. So California would be a great example. Where's California? I got books on the Magna Carta. I forgot about that. There's so many books, y'all. Books on passports. All this stuff, I got it. What was that going? California. California's got, like, I found some California jurisprudence books, so I found them. I put them on there because they got one about criminal law. They got one on equity. They got one on all this stuff, on all these topics. They got one on understanding the California Constitution. Very important stuff. All right, I'm going to turn this off on my camera.